All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our new installation of Nye's Night Notes. Here we're talking about Chapter 3, Lesson 2, our first one of Chapter 3. This is talking about adding integers, and we're going to use this, use an app called Algebra Tiles to help us here. One thing I liked is to take a look at this nice little picture. Caught myself right in the light right there. You know, got that nice pearly white smile. That's what I was hoping for. So as we start to add some integers, let's get ourselves started. First off, this is the app Algebra Tiles, and so this is the, if you don't have this app, check out self-service and see if you can download it. If not, send me an email and we can try to figure out how we can get you this app, because we're going to use this for a couple lessons to start. But this is the basics. I want to give you an idea about how this operates. Obviously, you don't need to write anything down. This is just kind of giving you an intro to the apps. We're going to be focused on just these two icons up here. Everything else down here happens when we dive into algebra towards the end of the year and then into next year. So right now we're just focused on these two integer units up here. To use this, you just click and drag those different units, and you can paste them onto this app, so you can start to see how some things happen. Obviously, this is just a screenshot, so you can't paste them, but then when you give some chance to exercise and try out Algebra Tiles, see what you can do to figure that stuff out. Other things, I like having my rows down here set to 2. That just gives this this horizontal line. If you go to 1, it just has one big box. I like kind of having mine spaced out, but you'll see some variations there, so you can change your rows. And then also you can click on this eye icon and it can give you a running total of what's on your screen. I have it down right now just for our purposes. And then finally, here's our trash can. You can click and drag things into the trash if you want to remove them. Finally, you can write on top of these by clicking any of our pen tools. And yeah, that's pretty much an intro to the app. So let's dive into Algebra Tiles. Again, don't need you to write anything down here. When I dragged a -1 chip into my algebra tile, and then I clicked on it, I have these 4 options to pop up. This one, I believe, will just go back. This one would turn your positive into a negative. This guy will duplicate your positive or negative, so you don't always have to drag every time. So I can click that a bunch of times, and it'll give me 2, 3, 4 positive chips. And then this will change the color of your positives or negative chips. So that's kind of an intro to the tiles. And so here I have a problem set up where I laid out 6 positive chips, and I'm going to add that to 4 positive chips. Obviously, we don't need a huge tutorial on this one. This is math that you've been knowing since you first started learning about addition, and this is simply going to be 10. We're going to use these principles to kind of carry us through. We know that we take a positives and we add more positives to it, our answer is going to grow bigger than either add end. So our answer would be more positive than both add ends, or either add end. So that's really nothing new. Don't need you to write that down, but after this, we're going to have you jot some stuff down. Now in this next problem, here we have -5, and we're going to add that to -2. This is going to follow the same principles that we did in positives, but now we're just in that mirrored world of negatives. And so now, what I would like you to write down is at least these 5 tiles, and you can do those in a couple different ways. You can either copy down the entire box and put a -1 in it. You could copy down a box and just put a negative sign in it, or you can just give me a negative. Each of those would stand for 1. So if I wanted to write down these 5 negatives in my notes, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 1, 2. That would be totally okay by me. Then if we ever are using positives in the future, you can always give it one of those or put a box around it, and that can count for your positive chips. So that's what I want you to have in your notes. I just want you to have 5 negative chips plus 2 negative chips. Let me get rid of all of this writing that I have, and we can go from there. So now that I have 5 negatives plus 2 negatives, we're going to use that same principle that we did in the positive world, where now if I'm adding 2 negatives together, my answer is going to get way more negative. So if I mash all these together, now I just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives. Therefore, my answer is going to be -7. I'm putting all my combinations together, and in this case, if I have 2 negatives and I'm adding them, I'm going to get it more negative. So -5 plus -2 equals -7. In your notes, just make sure you have 5 negatives plus 2 negatives equals -7. Now, this one I want you to introduce, because now we've only done adding 2 positive numbers or adding 2 negative numbers. Here we have what's called a zero pair, and a zero pair is when you combine a positive and a negative. And really all that means is, again, don't need you to write anything down here, so just listen up, is that here if we're starting with +1, that's here on my number line, and I want to add -1, I'm going to the negatives by 1 space. So I'm going more negative, I'm adding 1 negative, and that gets me to 0. So now these together are called a zero pair. What I would like you to have jot down in your notes would be something like this. 1 negative plus 1 positive equals 0. Always, always, always. This can be for 2 negatives plus 2 positives, 3 negatives plus 3 positives. Anytime you add these two opposites together, we get what's called a zero pair. So we're going to use these zero pairs to kind of help us understand adding two integers together. So as long as you know that a zero pair is a combination of 1 positive and 1 negative, you're going to be good to go. Another way to think about this is if I had 1 negative and then added 1, I would get to positive 0, or I'd get go 1 positive, I would get to 0. So again, just showing that a zero pair does equal 0. So when you combine those two things, always is 0. All right, now in your notes, what I want would be, let's see, we have 7 positives, so give me 7 positive signs, plus 4 negative signs. So give me 7 positives plus 4 negatives in your notes. Now we're going to use these zero pairs to help us figure out exactly what this would be. So now, I'm going to start making my zero pairs. Since I have 7 positives and 4 negatives, I'm adding them together. Really, I'm just mashing those two piles together. And now if I take 1 positive and 1 negative, that is a zero pair. So let's block it out of there because it's no longer relevant to our standing. Since this equals 0, it doesn't affect your final answer. So now let's cancel out all of your other zero pairs. Here's a zero pair, and a zero pair. Now that we've canceled out all of our zero pairs, let's see what's left. Left, we have 3 positives, so our answer then for negative 7, not negative 7, our answer for 7 plus negative 4 equals positive 3. Notice that I had more positives than I had negatives, and therefore my answer stayed positive. Since I had more positives than negatives, my answer stayed positive. And here on the flip side, here we have 4 negatives. So again, in your notes, just give me 4 negative boxes. And so this is negative 4. And so in your notes, I'd want at least that symbology, or put them in boxes, or whatever you need to do to show that we have negative 4, or 4 negative tiles. And here I have negative 4 plus positive 2. And so if I'm now adding negative 4 and positive 2, again, I'm looking for my zero pairs. I want to see which has more. So here's a zero pair, here's a zero pair. Let's rule those out. Let's cancel each other out. And now what I'm left with, negative 2. So this again shows us that, like the last problem, because I had more negative chips than I had positive chips, my answer stays negative. And so then I took negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. I pretty much subtracted these two away from my original to give me negative 2 as my final answer. We're going to play around with some integer chips and algebra chips from here on out to see how we can get to adding positive and negative numbers, but I want to give you a little tutorial about how to do so first. So we now are getting to the joke section of our books. After this, we're going to be just practicing some things with algebra tiles. So after this, I'm going to give you some time to play and practice with that algebra tile app, and then give you some problems to try, specifically using algebra tiles, even if you are feeling comfortable with this skill. So our joke, and then what you can jot down your notes, is what do you call a singing laptop? A laptop that likes singing. What do you call a singing laptop? Any guesses? You call it Adele. Get it? Adele. Get it? Adele, like the singer Adele? Adele, a laptop? Oh my gosh, I cracked myself up. That is ridiculous. All right, so that is the end of our video. With that, I will send you off with an adios. Best of luck.